We are on Facebook now. That's it. Here I have a sign.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Debby Enoe from Teacher Success Coach. I'm now doing a live regarding Female Educators Roundtable, looking at 18 months on from when educators started to be navigating a new normal. So 18 months on, what is it like for educators? What does it look like for educators? So I've got one of my guests who was with me when we actually first went on lockdown, Patricia. Patricia, can you introduce yourself?
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Patricia Arbona, and I'm from Argentina. I'm a teacher trainer and a drama teacher. I deliver presentations in Spanish and English on education issues. And I'm the founder of Ludo Drama, a group of teachers whose main concern is to enhance the quality of education.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, what I want us to now look at is 18 months on, what does education look like for you? Bearing in mind what happened, bearing in mind what actually happens, you know, in March.
Yes, well, it was a revolution. It was a complete revolution because we had to change overnight because we didn't know how to work with technology. We had information, of course, that some teachers were more trained than others, but in general, most teachers devoted a lot of time to studying how to use technology properly because physical classes disappeared, and we started having online classes. On top of this, we had to change our teaching methods because we were separated from our students. Imagine, it was chaotic. For the students, this also was a difficult situation because they were not used to being in front of a screen trying to learn something. Of course, that learning has been greatly affected because the students have not been able to learn properly. Because imagine, separated, it is impossible to follow what the students are doing, what the students are trying to learn. That is to say, we are not together in a physical classroom, and sometimes they keep their cameras off, so we don't know if they are really paying attention, if they are there, especially with adolescents. And with little children, well, when they get bored, they leave the room, no problem, or they bring their pet, because this is a clear indicator that they are not interested in what we are doing. And probably we spent a whole day planning a lesson. So at the beginning, it was very, very difficult. But one of the consequences of this pandemic crisis has been how resilient we are, not only teachers, students and families in general. And we have been able to adapt very easily. It took time, but now we are a different type of teachers. These type of teachers have nothing to do with the one we used to be in 2020. We have learned a lot. So one of the benefits of this pandemic crisis is the amount of information that we have received, and all that information has helped us to improve our teaching. And something very important that happened during this crisis, and is still happening, is that last year, we at the beginning, we didn't know what to do. So it was important to get together in order to share our teaching practices, to share resources, everything, in order to give the students the best we could. So we started meeting together with educators around the world. So in this way, we created bonds with educators from far places. But it was great because we started learning about their cultures, their way of teaching, and it was a situation in which everybody learned together. So gradually we started meeting once a week, and this is still, yes, we meet once a week, and we discuss different topics. And we are talking about what is really happening at the moment, what is happening at school at the moment when we are delivering classes. For example, here in Argentina, we are not having any online classes anymore. The children have gone back to school. The problem is that at the beginning, this was in March, they started going back to school in March. Well, they were, especially children, they really wanted to go back to school because they missed their teachers, they wanted to meet their friends, they wanted to be in this classroom atmosphere that is usually created when they are together. But they got disappointed because they realized that the school they had in March was completely different from the one they used to have in 2020. Why? Because there is social distance, they are separated, they sit individually at their desks, they do not have the opportunity to work together. So although this pandemic crisis has accelerated the process of transformation, we have gone back to the traditional method so that the students sit passively listening to the teacher. And this is a big mistake because learning means movement, means action, and the students do not want to remain passively seated listening to the teacher. They want to be part of the process of learning. So one of the strategies that we can implement in the classroom, since we cannot have cooperative work, for example, or experiential learning, today we know that the best way of learning is when the students are involved, that is to say, learning by doing. And that cannot be done in the type of classroom we are having at the moment. Okay, the students need to know that what they are learning can be applied in any everyday situation to find the utility value. So why is this useful for me? Okay, go to the kitchen, prepare a cake, and you will see, you will discover the measures, for example, that we have been learning today. So in this way, they are applying the knowledge or the content they have learned at school. So learning by doing will have to take place at home now. But in the future, when we go back to a more normal situation, when social distance disappears, they will be able to have this experience in the classroom because the students need to learn by doing. They need to have experiential learning. So this is what they are missing. But although, as I said before, this pandemic crisis indicated that there were lots of disadvantages in the type of education we were having in 2020 because it was mainly traditional. And whenever I met with educators around the world, well, they tell me the same. They are also having problems because they want to eradicate the traditional school because they realize that it's not working any longer. And I think that the same may happen in England. So still remains this traditional traces in education. Although the new trends in education, that is to say, active methodologies, have already been implemented in other parts of the world, in different schools. But the thing, what we are doing now is working very hard in order to have a general implementation of these active methodologies so that every child in the world will have the opportunity to enjoy this type of learning, because this means learning and at the same time having fun.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that, Patricia. It's interesting though, because we've gone back into the physical classroom in March, I think it's March of this year, but we were not able to implement social or physical distance because in my classroom, I've got 30 children. So there is no way we could actually implement that. The students were sitting in the same way that they were sitting before the pandemic. The only difference is, they had a choice of whether or not they wanted to wear the mask or not. And another thing that was there was, there was a line where the teacher sat in the front and the students were not allowed to cross that line. But they were still sitting, close to each other. Yeah. So we were told that they're in their classroom bubble. So that was seen as their bubble. So when they actually went on break, there should technically be on break in the little bubble. But in terms of sitting distance from each other, that was not practical, nor was it realistic. Having said that, in terms of when we actually taught the children, they still were able to do group work exercise because they were still sitting close to each other. So they had that opportunity to discuss the topic. The only difference was they were not able to move around in various groups. So they stayed where they were and they just worked in particular, let's say 3 or 4 individual on the table. So that's what they actually did in terms of group exercise. But in terms of physical distances, we didn't have that because it was unrealistic. As I said, the classes were big. My classes were 31 students. And for some of my other groups, I had 29 students. So there's no way we could actually realistically implement physical distances. So it wasn't it was not realistic, nor was it practical.
But you were in danger. Everybody was in danger there.
Yes, to an extent, in terms of, but they were allowed to wear the mask. So my classroom, the student wore the mask. It was a choice because I gave them the choice. I said, if you guys want to wear the mask, fine. If you don't want to wear the mask, that's okay too. Because in some of the schools I taught, it was not compulsory. It was, the discretion of the educator. So if the educator felt that he or she didn't want them to wear the mask, that's fine. And if the educator, he or her, did not want to wear the mask, that was okay too. But while the students were in the corridors, it was compulsory that they wore the mask. But in the classroom, it was optional.
How strange.
Yeah, so in terms of the physical distance, it
did not exist.
Yeah, it did not exist in some of the schools I worked in.
Yeah.
Some of the things we had were, the students, the children went to lunch as a group. So therefore they'll be going to lunch as the bubble, and they had different lunch times. So one of the things the school implemented was stagnation in lunch. And they were in one of the schools that were in, the students have to go wash their hands and then go to the playground, and the teachers would pick them up from the playground and take them in for lunch. So you took the class in for lunch as an individual group of students. So they actually went in when one group left, one group went in. So that was one of the things in one of the schools I worked at implemented. But in terms of the physical distance in the classroom, that wasn't possible. So it was interesting hearing you say that, you implemented the physical distances. So how many children do you have in your classroom?
Well, they are 30, but they are divided into groups. So this means that they have classes every other week.
Okay.
So they are 15 and they are separated because they are 30. Of course, they are not going to school every single day. So they are not learning as in a natural environment. Let's say they are not learning in the way they used to learn in 2020 because they are missing classes. The contents are reduced, but they are safer. They are safer because although here we are in lockdown, but the restrictions are not so strict today. We are in election time, So we are allowed to get together about, there is a specific number of people, but for example, we cannot travel abroad, we cannot attend a football match, we cannot go to a concert. There are restrictions, but at school, the students should follow a strict protocol. They are separated, they have to clean their hands before entering the classroom again after a break, and they are not allowed to stand up. I'm talking about children, children. I think that it must be more difficult with adolescents because sometimes they do not obey the teacher's orders or instructions. But anyway, we are having a new normal, but we are in a period of transition because the students are not learning in the way they must. So we are living in an uncertain times, and we don't know what will happen tomorrow. We don't know when this will come to an end. So it is difficult to have uncertainty around us all the time. And we are teachers, and we are responsible for what we are doing at school. So we feel that the students are not learning in the way they should. And students at higher levels are also having serious problems because the number of periods have been reduced. They are still having online classes. Because for them, it's better. And they are used to having online classes. But for children, last year, it was really difficult. That's why they have so many emotional and psychological health problems. I think that this crisis has particularly affected children's well-being because they suffered a lot. They had depression. They had they suffered from anxiety. They had stress. And for example, in our case, teachers and students got stressed in ways we never thought before. Because the students also felt uncomfortable in the type of learning they were having at the moment. First of all, the environment was not good because they were at home, and at home there are noises. The dog is barking, the siblings are moving around, parents are talking in the kitchen, and it was difficult for them to concentrate on what the teacher was saying. So on both sides, we were separated, and we cannot ask for silence because you could listen, because it happened. You could listen parents talking somewhere else in the house, but it's impossible to get absolute silence. And what we need in learning, focused attention. So it was very difficult to get their attention, to get their motivation. That's why we had to be as creative as possible. But in spite of the fact of all the efforts we made, it was difficult. And today, after a year, we realize that they have learned little, let's say, in spite of our efforts.
Do you think so? Do you think, because your students are split in two groups, right? Yeah. So you've got 30, but you have 15 coming one week and 15 coming the next week. So what do you do in terms of the 15 that isn't coming this week? Are they being taught online?
No, there is no more online classes. No, they are all coming. They are all going to school. Online classes have stopped here at the moment. Let's see what happens tomorrow. This uncertainty is always present. But they are going to school at the moment, physical classes only. But the thing is that if they don't go every day, they go every other week. This means that the contents are greatly reduced. They are attending half of the year. You see?
Right. Yeah. So what do you do? So how do they catch up with what they are missing the every other week?
Who knows? Well, the thing is that depending on the school and the number of students, because sometimes there are more than 30, there may be 50 students. I don't know in other institutions the way they work. But the thing is that they do not go every day. In some schools, depending on the organization, because sometimes it depends on the premises. If the school is small and if it hasn't got enough rooms, the students cannot be divided into groups or in three because there is no room for each group. So sometimes, depending on the group, one bubble can go in the morning and the other in the afternoon.
Right.
So every school organizes the way they can.
Right.
But at the moment, at least where I live, they do not go every single day.
Right.
Go every day, I think. You do. You go to school every day.
Yes. Ours were, once we started back in the physical classroom, we were there every day. So it was just like normal. My student come in, they stand outside, they come in, they disinfect their hands, and they go to the seat. The only thing we've had was we did a sitting plan, so which means that every day the students have to sit in the same seat. They cannot move around in any other seat, so that if there is an outbreak of COVID, we know which child sat next to each child. So that was the only difference. You know, they could not move anywhere else. They just sat in the same seat. But in terms of the teaching I did, for example, it was very much, you know, what I would normally do. The only exception, I could not teach them in different groups. So let's say I had them sitting in rows, they would be turning around and walking with the group next to them. So they were in groups of 4s or 6, whatever. But because they're all sitting close to each other, literally next to each other. My only difference is, as an educator, I was at the front of the class and I could not walk around the classroom. That was one of the biggest things. We couldn't walk around the classroom. You just had to remain at the top of the class.
That's it. Know. Yes. So it's apart from that, you are able to cover all the contents you have planned for the year.
Yes.
So in this case, it's not possible. It's not possible. Anyway, students at higher level, for example, they have problems. They have to complete the whole course, and sometimes they need more time for explanation, for practice. So it's also difficult for them. The other day, I was having a meeting with students from a teacher training college, and they were telling me about this, that they need more time, further explanations, but as they are separated from the teacher, they cannot be together. And normally, when we are together, we have the opportunity to exchange mistakes, to exchange doubts, and further explanations. Because normally, the doubts the students may have, I share by the whole class. And besides, the periods have been reduced. They do not have online classes in the same way they used to have. I mean, the number of periods, they have been reduced, because imagine they cannot be in front of a screen for so many hours. But anyway, they have to study. They have a design to follow, and sometimes they have to study on their own. And I think that this is a problem, because in the future they will become professionals. I'm talking about students who will become teachers, and they need the most important part of a class is practice. And now practice has been restricted. Why? Because they do not have the opportunity to stand up and have work with a group of peers. That is to say, to experiment with what they are learning. So when they experiment, when they explore new information, and they are working together, and they are really assessing if they are learning, this cannot take place at the moment when they are online. And something very important that is missing at present is metacognition. I insist on this because it's not as present as it should be. Metacognition is one of the most important components of 21st century. And it is not implemented everywhere. I always say that every child in the world, because I think that education should be global, because we are all educators around the world have the same aims. And each student around the world should have the opportunity to reflect on their own learning. Because when they start reflecting on their own learning, they discover their own weaknesses and strengths. And in this way, they are able to become autonomous. We are not giving them the opportunity to be independent. Because the type of learning we are giving them is individual. And learning is not individual. Learning is social.
But, also bearing in mind what have actually happen in terms of we were social learners and social teachers. Now we very much individual teachers and individual learners. How do you feel, or how do you think that type of situation have really impacted students' learning and their ability to progress?
I think that it has been difficult, because for those students, well, imagine students with special needs. They have not been able to learn during this period. Or students with attention problems or learning problems. It has been very difficult. And with ordinary students, there are two possibilities. Or it was impossible for them to understand and follow the teacher, or they got bored. And it was impossible for them to get motivated because we are separated by a screen. So in spite of our efforts to create this pleasant atmosphere that is required, I cannot start a class if my students are not emotionally prepared. But being separated, it was impossible to assess if they were really ready for the process of learning. So I couldn't even monitor their learning from my seat from here. So I think that there is an education gap that we need a recovery program. I don't know how this could be done. I think that we need to get together, educators around the world, and decide the way, not the government. The governments are not the ones that can give us direction. I always say the same. We are never consulted, and we are experts in education because we are the ones that spend all the time at school, and we are observing our students, and we know what they need because we are listening to them, and according to the type of students we have, we plan our lessons. But what happens with governments in general around the world, normally most of them, they give you instructions to implement something that it's impossible in real life. It's something ideal. What they offer is often ideal because they are not real teachers. So when you try to implement it, you find that it is rather difficult because we are dealing with reality, with living creatures, with people. We are people with feelings. But anyway, as it is compulsory, we try hard to implement it. And sometimes we fail. But as we can find the way to implement what has been sent from the government, well, we make some adjustments, and we normally do it because we are hard workers, and whenever we are thinking about our students, we try to do our best. But that's not the case. I think that we should be consulted, and I think that the same may happen in England. Are you consulted?
Oh, no.
No, we're not consulted, and this is a big mistake.
We
know about school. We know about our students. We are good communicators because we are normally paying attention to the way they learn, the potential. For example, the potential they bring to school is crucial. So according to that, if we assess our students, we will be able to organize our classes much better. So this information, for example, is normally ignored in the traditional classroom. That's not important. What is important is the content. And today, I think that love and care come before content. Today, today we're still having a school that is content dominant. And today, feelings are much more important, than content. First, I need to be sure that my group is ready for the process of learning. That's why, well, I use drama, and I love drama because all the techniques that are used are normally engaged students. So they learn by doing, and they have lots of fun. But one of the most important pieces of advice that drama gives is, in order to prepare our students for the process of learning, we can implement some warm-ups. Warm-ups are not as common as they should be. For example, brain gym, some physical exercises, stretching, for example, breathing. Depending on the age of your students, you can have a variety of exercises that prepare the brain for the process of learning. So the students have fun, they like what they do. 5 minutes, 8 minutes before starting the class, no more than that, it's enough. I do it and it works. And whenever you start the class directly, they start asking you, what about warm-ups? No warm-ups today. So this means that they need it, they like it. We seldom think about learning as a precious moment. Students go to school to learn. So when students learn, there are important emotions that appear, and they are positive emotions. And when they get bored because the type of learning they are receiving or the type of learning that is imposed, because I decide through my different teaching techniques, the type of learning the students will have. For example, is it active? Is it passive? Are they taking active participation? So in a way, I direct their learning as a teacher. Well, if they don't like the way, they get demotivated and they start thinking about something else, or they start doing something else. So it is our responsibility to catch their attention, because they need focused attention. Without focused attention, they won't be able to learn properly. And when they are motivated, so intrinsic motivation is necessary, because if I say, okay, if you pay attention at the end of the class, I will give you a chocolate. No, that's extrinsic. That won't work, because he will be paying attention because he knows that at the end of the class, he will get a chocolate. So what type of learning is that? So what we need to get is intrinsic motivation. So, and when there is intrinsic motivation, there is curiosity. This means that the students are really interested in what you are saying. And in this way, they learn. So I think that teaching and learning, when they occur together, is really amazing. It works like magic. That's why I'm very proud of being a teacher, because we can do amazing things. I always say that we are not just instructors. We are not teaching our students just contents. It goes beyond that. We are working together and we are learning together. All of us, teachers and students, are learners in the classroom, and that's great.
Yes. When you look at, before the pandemic and you look at now your teaching, how your teaching style is, what would you say are your biggest, what's the biggest difference between that? How you were teaching before, right, the pandemic, and how you're teaching right now? What are the largest difference apart from online teaching? What else would you say are major changes?
Well, well, first of all, I don't like teaching online, because imagine I teach drama and it's very difficult for me to engage students. I normally work with trainee teachers, so they are grown-ups. So there is, they are motivated, but the type of activities that are selected when you are online are completely different from the ones you can use when you can move around in the classroom. You can have activities in which the students work cooperatively. So in an online class, everything is much more restricted. For example, the type of activities that I can use online are improvisations, in which there is no preparation, because if any preparation is needed, they cannot get together, because we are separated in boxes here. You see, they cannot connect each other. And with improvisations, well, I give a topic and they start speaking about it. Of course, that interaction may be present, yes, but the type of activities are restricted. And in the case of children, well, at the beginning they were afraid of participating because it was strange for them in front of a screen, and they didn't want to participate. And when they were listening to the teacher, they got bored and they started doing something else. And remember that the environment was not suitable, because it was completely different from the classroom environment. So that climate that is created. So I think that what I have learned, and many teachers have learned too, is that these online classes are a supplement, not a substitute. Physical classroom will never be replaced by online classes. Many teachers insist that this is the opportunity to keep on using this type of classes, but blended learning may be kept. But I think that online classes should be considered an aid, a supplement, not a substitution, especially with children and adolescents. At higher levels, of course, they are used to working like that. But I think that when you are with children, with adolescents, I think that the interpersonal contact is very important. It's very important because we need to create rapport, and rapport here it's impossible to be created. So there are disadvantages. What advantages can you find online? I think that one of the advantages is that, well, you are far away and I am on the other side of the world. But as regards students, for example, living in the same time, because most of the students we have live in the same time, of course. Well, we can be together without taking a bus, for example. What other advantage can you find having online classes? I would like to know, because I'm very negative with this type of classes.
Well, for me, the fact is, years ago when teachers have, let's say, female, I'm looking at more female educators here, I'm being biased. When teachers, have young children and the children are off sick, right? They too have to stay at home. They cannot go to work, right? And one of these things, this is what it offers, because my son was ill and I still taught. It was he that is ill, nothing to do with me. So therefore, I taught my class online. So I had the opportunity, even though we were in the physical classroom, I still taught online because, my son was ill and I had to stay at home. So therefore, I still, kept the topic going with my students. They did not have to miss out on that because I still continue with the teaching that we did the day before. So that's one of the plus for me. Another thing is, if students are at home because they're, for whatever reason, you could still teach them, you're teaching from the physical classroom and you're actually teaching the children who are at home. If a child have an appointment in the morning and they're going to be coming back late, you could still actually teach the hybrid setup in the physical classroom and still teach them while they were home. So those are some of the things I feel that it gives the opportunity to still continue the learning, even though they're at home. So that's the plus for me in terms of the online teaching. And it also meant that if you have to speak to a parent and the parents cannot, attend to see you, you could actually do the, like you could do a Zoom call or a Teams call with a parent, because a lot of the parents, when you have parents consultation, a lot of them didn't come to parents consultation because they were working, they couldn't get back in time, whatever the excuse are. But now the fact that we have this, we have access to the online, we can actually have more parents interacting and being aware of what's going on with their children.
This is good. Yes, yes. You can get in contact with them easily.
Exactly. Because there are various options. If you cannot come to the school, that's fine, no problem. I'll have a Zoom set up, and then we can have a Zoom communication. So they're still constantly aware of what's going on with the children. So those are the things I feel that the online offer us.
That's so.
And it also offers another tool, which is awareness of, what is possible. Because there are times that, as you said earlier on, look, you're in Argentina, I'm in London, and we're having a dialogue, and that's fantastic. Whereas before, it's either someone have to fly somewhere, but now we can actually do this and find out how other educators are navigating this new normal. So I want to know what's going on with them. I want to know how they're now navigating this new normal. So therefore, I could actually speak to so many educators around the world, and they're telling me that what is happening with them in terms of this new normal that they actually had to carve out for themselves. Because as you rightly said, no way would we go back to the old classroom style. It's not going to happen.
Yes, it's true. No, I was talking about online classes with our students only. I know this is one of the positive consequences of this pandemic crisis, the opportunity to get together educators around the world. We started last year because we were really desperate. We didn't know what to do at the beginning. And we have been keeping meeting after that. And it's great because we are learning every week because we get together and we share experiences. And I think that the process of transformation that had started before the pandemic crisis, and it was accelerated by this process, it'll go on improving. The idea is that it has to become generalized. The whole world should share a different education, because today in different countries we have evidence of the success of this type of active methodologies. For example, in Spain, I have lots of educators from Spain who are using active methodologies, and the results are great. Project-based learning, for example, is the one that is normally used, or flipped classroom.
Yeah.
Here in Argentina in 2018, the government decided that an active methodology should be used in our schools, and some schools became pilot and they implemented this type of methodology. The problem was that teachers were not prepared for implementing this new methodology, so they had to study very hard in order to implement it. But after 2 years, the results were great. I remember that at that time I organized with Ludodrama, I organized workshops with specialists on this type of methodologies. And well, we all work together in order to get information and use it in our schools. And after 2 years, the results were great because we worked together. The students have a different perspective of the contents they were taught. For example, there was integration. All the subjects were together. When we use project-based learning, there is no difference in subjects. So they do not follow teachers do not follow the traditional method. In the traditional method, we have the subjects separated in boxes and they are not related. But in the project-based learning, you propose a specific topic. Let's talk about water, and water is studied from the point of view of chemistry, from the point of view of biology. So the students have an integral knowledge of water. When they study water in chemistry, water in biology, water in geography, they cannot integrate all the information because of the way that is taught. So with this type of methodologies, they have the opportunity to learn better, significantly, and meaningfully. And they have experiential learning because they are in direct contact with what they are learning. That's the difference.
That's very, very true. From, looking back 18 months on, what would you say that you're now able to, what are your big takeaways? What are your takeaways and what do you miss? What do you miss? 18 months on, what have you missed in terms of, the way teaching used to be to the way teaching is now? What have you missed?
Well, I'm very happy with the type of teacher I am because I have learned a lot. And I think that I have learned more last year than in the previous years, because normally we are lifelong learners. But I can't tell you exactly what, but in general, I feel more confident, for example. And this confidence has been given through the contact with other educators around the world. And this is priceless, because sometimes you are working with colleagues within the same country or within the same city. Let's restrict the possibilities. And you think that you are working correctly. But when you discover other cultures, when you discover other types of learning, other different resources of different ways of doing things, well, that's amazing. This means that you are stepping outside your comfort zone and you are taking challenges. So what I'm doing now is taking challenges. Of course, I have been outside the comfort zone for ages because as I teach drama, this is compulsory. If you don't are outside the box, you cannot be a drama teacher. But this has taught me to take challenges, to take risks, because this is the best way of learning, of becoming. We are always lifelong learners, but the amount of information we have been learning recently is really very great, in spite of the fact that we have been suffering since this COVID-19 pandemic started, because emotionally and physically we have not been feeling well, and we have been working hard in spite of the problems we have been having, lots of family losses and emotional problems. So it has been devastating from that point of view. But, well, I think that we are resilient, and when this one time will be over, let's hope for the best, we will enjoy the type of person we have become. And I think that even children are different, although they are young, they are little people, and they have suffered a lot too. And little attention have been paid in society in general. Only parents were very concerned about the problems they were having with their children at home. And they are resilient too. And I think that the emotional problems they have been having will have an effect in the future, no doubt. They will be different because of what they experienced during this period. And that's why today we are adults, we are different from the type of person we used to be. But I think that our teaching has increased, our methods have become better. And I think that this is because of the communicative work we have been doing. We have been working cooperatively. And we have got lots of new friends and educators who share the same aims. That's why it has been very easy to work together. Imagine when we met last year, we didn't know each other very well, but we started discovering each other, and there are many points in contact. So this is amazing, because we are working in different countries. We are having different types of students, different methodologies, different government instructions. And in spite of that, there is a connecting thread. And that is amazing.
So that's what's, sorry.
That's great. You feel the same. So you see, you feel the same.
That's what's so beautiful. The fact that, before the pandemic, as you rightly say, educators were working in isolation, England, my lot in London, etc. But when the pandemic came, we all, when we start discussing, or we start, discussing, or you hear what other educators are talking about, you realize although we poles apart, we have so much more in common than we actually thought we had in common. Because we were all going through the same challenges. We don't know how to navigate the online platform. We don't know what to do. The students are actually running rings around us on the online platform. I had so many experiences where, one of the students decided that he was going to, because I wasn't too familiar with Teams at the time. So he decided that he was going to take control of my class, because I did not realize that I meant to make sure I take control and mute everybody else. So this student decided that I kept putting on the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint was disappearing. And I thought, there's no point in getting angry about it, just leave it. So the next day I decided there's no way you're going to beat me on that. All night I went to YouTube to learn the skill. So that's what this have taught us. We had to learn the skills in order to beat our student on that, because these students are these students are tech students, where some of us are not tech people. We had to learn the skills.
Yes, we have to learn from that. We have to learn that from them. Yes, it's true, because they are experts on that.
Exactly.
Even children can teach us how to use a cell phone.
Exactly. So 1 year on, as you said, Patricia, I'm reflecting 1 year when I realized, oh my goodness, I am so much a better educator than I was 18 months ago, not only in terms of technology, in terms of my empathy. You become more empathetic, you become more aware. There's so many issues there, in terms of the journey we have been on as educators. We have been on a journey, and the journey is still continuing.
Of course. And who knows when it will finish, because we don't know. Period of uncertainty, who knows? But the idea is that we are growing every single day and we are learning a lot. And this is important because in any profession, this is important, but we have a great responsibility in society because we are preparing students for the future, for now and for the future.
Yeah.
And this is very important.
Yeah. Thank you very much. What one thing are you going to, what's one of your biggest takeaway you have, so far on this new normal? Because, you're now navigating very differently, from when you started. So what's your big takeaway in terms of the last 18 months?
I have learned that I have learned the value of emotions. I have always taken emotions into account. But I think that during this period, emotions became much more important than ever before. But the problem was that it was very difficult to transmit that rapport that is necessary to create a pleasant atmosphere. So this is one of the biggest difficulties we had during these online classes. But I have enhanced the value of emotions. I think that without emotions, learning cannot take place. Aristotle once said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So imagine at that time, it's still true today. So I think that we need to insist on this. We cannot start a class without feeling that the students are not prepared for the process of learning. So enhancement of emotions. This is for me the most important takeaway. What about you? Tell me.
Well, for me, it's like the mental health issue.
Yes.
Much more aware of mental health of my students than I was before. As a psychologist, it's like, yes, I felt that I took it for granted. You just go through the process. But going back into the classroom after the pandemic, I became so much more aware of the fact that my background in psychology, and I began to use it a lot more than I was ever using it before. As I said, I think I took it for granted. But when I realized some of my colleagues wasn't aware, or the student, when I'm asking the students, okay, how are you and how does it feel, etc., and they're saying to me that no other teacher have asked them about themselves. And that was coming from my background in psychology, that I believe in order for me to have my students to learn, as you rightly say, I need to have their mind in the right place. And if their mind is not in the right place, I cannot teach the students. And more and more and more, I'm beginning to realize how important psychology is. And I feel that that should be an element that is taught in teachers' training, that teachers are aware in terms of the psychology, the power of the mind, and how the mind would affect every single thing that an individual student does. Instead of, when a student behaves irrational, that should be looked at as, I wonder what is causing that irrational behavior, not just looking at the behavior at face value. So that's what this have actually taught me so much more in terms of, I took my psychology for granted because I just, I've used it and, it's part of me and that was this. But it made me become so much aware, and I'm using it a lot more than I ever have. And I'm beginning to see the power and the value of psychology.
Of course,
so
yes.
That's what I've actually, in terms of, the teaching I got in the last 18 months, I begin to realize even more so the power of psychology, because I took it for granted. Because I'm a psychologist, I took it for granted that everybody would automatically ask the students, how are you feeling? How is this pandemic affecting you? I took it for granted, but then I realized that it's not something to take for granted, because some of the educators have never asked the students that, because there was so much focus on teaching the contents, as you were talking about earlier on, that they forget that you cannot teach the contents if the student's mind is not in the right place.
That's it. We completely agree each other. Yes, that's great. Yes, well, that's why in the new education trends, there is a tendency to introduce social and emotional learning. It's crucial. It should be present. The students need to know emotional intelligence, social skills, everything that is related to emotions is crucial, because in that way they will become not only better students, but better people in general. So that's crucial. And psychology is to know how the mind, how prepared is their minds for the process of learning or for any other activity. If they are having some mental or emotional problem, the class cannot be started. That's why we need to be good observers. And their metacognition plays a crucial role, because you start reflecting with your students the problems they are having. And sometimes the problems are shared by many students, but sometimes they are shy and they prefer not to talk. But when they discover that their problem is not as individual as they thought, they start sharing the problem they are having. And the solution comes more quickly.
Yeah. And it's very true. Educators, one of the things I do feel that the pandemic have actually taught a lot of educators is become much more an observer than you've ever been. Because we need to be looking in terms of what the students are not telling us is crucial.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
When they behave in a particular way, something is happening. So we need to discover the problem they are having instead of telling them off. On the contrary, let's start talking with him and reflect on that behavior, and probably you will get a lot of information that was ignored, because you're only, as you said before, the only aim was to start teaching the content you have planned for that day.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Patricia. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, no, I'm very happy to have been with you today. We could speak for ages.
I know it, as educators.
Yes, we share the same passion. So I'm very glad you have invited me to have this amazing talk together. And okay, let's see what will happen in the future. Probably we will meet sometime later. And I know that we will be able to tell more news, because as we said before, we are learning all the time. So probably we will have more information about the way this normal life is unfolding. Who knows? Uncertainty is present.
Yeah, it is so very true. Yes, thank you very much to my Facebook audience, and thank you very much to everybody, because what we are looking at is, and I'll be looking at in the next few series, is 18 months on. How have educators navigating this new normal, and what we are taking away in terms of when we first started this new normal online teaching to where we are right now? What are some of the things that we had to navigate? What life have been for some of us, in the new physical classroom, because most places have gone on physical. So those are some of the things that I'll be looking at. And if there are any educators out there who want to share that with us, feel free to message me. And what I'll also be doing is looking at some of the educators that I had from last year when I started this show, looking at online teaching, what was the challenges and triumphs. That was what I began to look at. Now I'm looking at 18 months on, how are we as educators navigating this new normal that we find ourselves in? And let's not make no mistake in terms of the journey educators have been on. Educators, you have been on a really bumpy journeys. There have been the situation where you had the smooth, and then you have the rough, and now you have the smooth. It's been challenging for us. And one of the things is a lot of educators have assessed their students and given students grade in terms of the exam scripts. And the question is, would that remain, or what is the government saying? The government is saying that they want it to go back to how it used to be, whereby examiners are marking the script. But my question is, we have just marked the exam script. So are you saying that you have no confidence in what we've just done? Is that what you're saying to us? Because we've just shown you that we've assessed our students from the time we taught them, and we were able to mark the exam and give them an exam grade, etc. Now you're saying that you want it to go back to how it was before. Are you saying that you don't have any confidence in our ability as educators to assess our students and mark the exam scripts? There again, yet again, another issue regarding educators. When the chips are down, when the government and everybody's lost, they're still looking for educators to support them, to build up, etc. But when we actually have done that, they begin to have doubts. Really? We were doing it. So are you saying that you don't have any trust in what we're doing? That's something for you guys to think about. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. Take care, stay blessed, and I'll see you guys on Sunday. I have another show on Sunday. I'm also looking for individuals who could talk to us on mental health, because I'm doing a show on mental health, not only of educators, just mental health. You know, what are the issues in terms of mental health? Someone have said, one of my clients have said to me yesterday, which is interesting. She said to me that when you look at any job document, it says advertisement rather, any job advertisement is saying that we are looking for individuals who are competent, who've got the skills, etc. And another thing they put, we're also looking for individuals who could work under pressure. Really? Are we saying, remember, when people work under pressure, you are putting the mental health at risk here. And if you're saying that you're looking for individuals to work under pressure, what are we saying? Leave you with that thought. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Take care, stay blessed, and I'll see you guys later in the weekend.